Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Welcome to day 7 of Crucible League spoiler season. 3.21 is getting really close to upon us now, but we've got a few significant bits of information today, including probably the most significant divination card for a couple of leagues. This is the Brother's Gift. This is a set of 1 divination card for 5 divine orbs. So basically every time you find this, it's like finding a stack of 5 divines on the ground. Now there's a bunch of speculation as to where this might drop from, given that it's clearly very closely thematically linked to the Brothers Stash divination card, which is for 5 exalted orbs. It may also drop in the same maps, we'll have to find out on that one, but I will put a link down in the description below if you're interested in reading the backstory behind this card, because it is a fairly touching tribute story. GGG did also post a video that shows the new Vaal Animated Weapon skill in action, but there's not really all that much to see with it. Vaal Animate Weapon is going to live or die based upon the numerical values on the skill, and we don't have those yet. Finally, we have the Crucible FAQ. Now, this is a separate event to the Crucible FAQ with Chris Wilson that happened during the live stream announcement a few days ago. This is going to be a whole bunch of questions that people have asked since that came out. Now, I have submitted a large number of follow-up questions, which I'll go through at the end of this, but let's go through the things that GGG have already given us answers to. Firstly, will Crucible become a core game mechanic? The answer is we don't know yet. Can we get a list of the Crucible passives and which weapon types they appear on? The answer is no. Have fun finding them out yourselves. How many portals does the Forge of the Titans area have? Now, the Forge of the Titans is the map version of Crucible events, and you will get 6 portals to it just like a normal map. Are Crucible trees randomly generated each time, and are the skills specific to the weapon or shield type? Crucible trees are randomly generated, though the types of skill a weapon can get will be dependent upon its item level and its class. For example, bows will have access to particular bow passives and will not have access to particular scepter passives. Note that an existing Crucible tree can be removed if you're able to access and complete a special Crucible endgame encounter. Now, this is the endgame functionality that allows you to change your Crucible tree on an item. Are there any restrictions as to how many times you can merge trees on a weapon or shield? No, there are not. However, only weapons with revealed trees can be combined with each other. Was it intentional that there are no minion mastery changes listed? No, there are no changes happening. We're aware of feedback asking for these in the future. What happens when you unequip Blood Price, the new helmet that reserves enemy monsters' life? The answer is that this will not heal the enemy. So if you want to equip Blood Price, then swap to a different helmet, then you'll find that the enemies will lose 8% of their life and they won't get it back. How will Master Distiller interact with Mageblood? So Master Distiller consumes flask charges, so as long as you've got flask charges to spend, then you will still get the benefits of Master Distiller. This is one of the new mechanics that's being added to the Pathfinder ascendancy, and your Mageblood will turn those flasks on all the time, whether they've got charges or not. So essentially, the charges that you would normally be regaining through Mageblood will still be there for you to use in conjunction with Master Distiller. Do keep in mind that most people who use Mageblood apply enkindling orbs to their flasks. This prevents them from regaining flask charges. Although you don't need to use enkindling orbs, you can use the slightly weaker harvest crafts that do much the same thing. They give you increased flask effect, but they do so with a different drawback, and it's one that doesn't really interact with Mageblood much at all. So if you are interested in using Master Distiller alongside Mageblood, you probably want to consider using the weaker harvest enchants rather than the enkindling orb setup that you would normally use. Can you clarify how the 2 new sources of 10% of Leech's instant masteries work? So they're in Claw masteries and they're also in generic Leech mastery. Does it recover 10% of your maximum total life per second from Leech? Now, Leech is an absolutely messy thing to get to the bottom of, and this is something that I can't really explain all of the details of without a bunch of research. But each individual Leech still has a maximum amount. So this means that if you hit an enemy for 1 billion life, and you've got 10% of damage that you inflict leeched as life, you don't actually leech 100 million life, you'll leech a much smaller amount, which is your maximum leech, and this is based upon your character's life total. If you leech the maximum amount per leech, you'll get 10% of that amount instantly, and 90% dribbling in over time. Or you may get 30% instantly if you're using dual claws, and you have both types of mastery, and then 70% will dribble in over time. However, there is also a maximum on the total recovery rate of all leech. Instant leech isn't part of that because it has no rate. So essentially, you can see 10% of leech as instant. If you're hitting hard enough, then this is going to be a percentage of your life recovered instantly on hit. Regarding skills cost life instead of 30% of mana cost. What does this mean exactly? So all this means is that if a skill costs 10 mana, it will now cost 3 life and 7 mana. With the introduction of the new life mastery, 15% increased maximum life if there are no life modifiers on equipped body armor, will unique modifiers on items currently tagged as life modifiers get a pass over to make more uniques work with this mastery? The answer is no, and it's important to note that there's a number of things that players may not intuitively think of as life modifiers that are on armors that will turn this off. Some of the ones that I've noticed, the brass dome has a drawback on it that reads strength does not gain you any bonus to life. This is actually tagged as a life mod, and as a result will not work with this mastery. Doppleguise has a mod that you probably don't use very much that causes you to recover life under certain situations. That is a life mod. And also, Cloak of Defiance's Mind Over Matter, that is also a life mod. So there are a number of things that are life mods that might not look like it, but there's plenty of chess that this will benefit, and this is a strong mastery. It's just not going to work on every single one that you might intuitively think of. If you're in doubt, just check up the specific chess piece that you're thinking of on the website POEDB, and it will list all of the tags that are listed there. So none of these mods are being changed. They have been as they are since Heist League, but they're just starting to matter now for the first time since pretty much forever. Now here's the biggest one. The gain adrenaline for 1 second when you switch stance mastery seems too strong. Will you change it? Now, it's not just that it seems too strong, it's that it seems like it is going to be absolutely miserable to play with. And the answer is we're looking into this, and we will let you know on the recently asked questions post. At the time I'm recording this video, there is nothing further on this. I do not expect this will go live, and if it does go live, I think it's going to be something that will have to be hotfixed out because everyone is going to hate it. The way that you optimize playing around this mastery is going to be completely unfun, and when the most powerful thing to do in the game is not fun, cough cough endless heist, it's something that results in people going, you know what, I'm not willing to do what's needed to play this game right, so I'm not going to play it at all. That's why this one needs to be fixed. Honestly, I think the Crucible expansion will suffer badly if this is left in the game. Do you know if the Triggerbots will work with things like Summon Holy Relic minions? The answer is no. Triggerbots only work with things you trigger yourself. They don't work with things your minions trigger. What are the implications of the changes to the way projectiles return to you for both Kinetic Blast and Fireball when used with the Nimis ring linked to Fork? Do they still explode on walls and your character, and on contact with Fork? So, Nimis changes from projectiles return to you at the end of flight to projectiles return to you. This means projectiles will return if they collide with a target and they don't pierce, chain, fork, etc. from it, whereas before they would not have done so. Fireball already did not explode when it forked, or pierced, or chained. Fireball's explosion destroys the projectile, and only happens when the projectile can't move further through any behaviour. Kinetic Blast does not itself explode, it causes explosions around when it impacts something. This is still the case. So Nimis continues to cause lots of troubles there. Did United in Dream also lose its poison chance? No, it did not. The poison chance was removed only from Severed in Sleep. Has a Balance of Terror unique jewel been removed from the game? It's not going to be obtainable in 3.21, as it was only something you could get from Lycia, so that means that it's not going to be available in 3.21 because Lycia is not going to be accessible, but the ones that do exist at the moment will continue to exist in Standard. What is Spark's projectile speed now? It has been nerfed 25%, and the patch notes have been clarified to explain that. Was the removal of Books of Regression intended to nerf the strategy that involved using them for Heist? Yes, it was, although that's not really what was said here. Books of Regression were removed because their intended purpose, related to PvP characters, is no longer relevant. The way they were being used in Heist was not intended. Really, this is a case of GGG finding something that almost no one enjoyed doing, but that was too strong not to do, and going, you know what, we're going to nerf this because people will have more fun playing the game properly than they will doing this degenerate strategy, and as a result, they got rid of it. That's really the answer there. With Ruthless offering a different, smaller set of challenges to complete than the base game, will it be possible to mix and match some challenges in Ruthless alongside some in the main league in order to get the challenge rewards? You can't mix and match, they're separate challenge tracks. So Ruthless will have 8 challenges, the base game will have 40. Because Ruthless is mostly designed to appeal to some subset of the people that do get 40 challenges, I think that getting 8 challenges in Ruthless is probably going to be miles harder than getting 40 in the base game will be. And so I expect that this will be a case where people will generally find the path of least resistance is to ignore Ruthless. But if you want to play in Ruthless, you will be able to do so there, and you'll be able to get those challenge rewards. Why is the boss kill event being hosted in Ruthless? This is in response to some of the feedback from experienced racers that they're not happy about that. And GGG want to say here that they want the event to represent the ultimate challenge in Path of Exile, which is basically to kill pinnacle bosses in question whilst under all 3 of the hard mode rule sets that are in play. So Ruthless, Hardcore, and Solo Self-Found all at once. Is there a prize pool for the boss kill event on consoles? Yes, in theory, the first player's winner for each console platform will receive a transferable ExileCon VIP ticket. But whilst I do think that on the PC version of the game, there will be winners for this Ruthless event, and it'll be a bit quicker than a lot of people expect, I would be very, very surprised if the boss kill event is won on consoles at all. I think GGG should probably look at having some alternative for console players, because I don't think that the pool of players on console is large enough to have enough elite players to be able to win that. The people who start playing on console and become extremely good at the game, generally speaking, if they're interested in being involved in racing, they probably set up a PC account and play the game on PC instead, because that's where the competition is. For that reason, I don't think anyone's going to win it on console. I think they should probably tone it down to maybe killing the Eater of Worlds and the Searing Exarch as 4-mod rare invitations or something like that. So there's also one other change that's been made to the patch notes, and that is that the Assailum unique helmet now grants level 30 snipe skill, previously 20. I assume this is probably no change in how Assailum functions, but the GGG likely felt that the Assailum version of the snipe skill was too strong to be gem level 20, although we'll have to see that when it's actually revealed. In addition to all of this, GGG have the recently asked questions section on their website. This has been updated a lot today, and it's got a number of questions answered that have been additional questions people have submitted that didn't make it in time for the Crucible FAQ. Now, the questions that I submitted have not been added in here yet, so hopefully we'll get some answers to those as well. So, does the new Elemental Mastery that has a 25% chance to invert enemy resistances work with traps? And the answer is yes. Will Nimis projectiles return even if they hit nothing? The answer in most cases is yes. A projectile which flies out uninterrupted to the maximum projectile range will return instead of just stopping there. But returning, like piercing, chaining, etc., does not extend how long a projectile can exist. If a projectile lasts for an explicit duration like Spark, or fades out over a fixed time like Freezing Pulse, it stops existing after that and cannot return. What is considered a chest for the new Caster Mastery that grants a chance to open a chest? Interactable objects in the game world which would normally be opened by clicking on them, damaging them, or either, which drop items. This includes crates, jars, etc. Chests locked by specific game mechanics cannot be opened until unlocked. One thing of interest, there are a number of chests in the game, most notably in research areas in the Betrayal system, that actually can contain monsters, so just be aware of that if you are using this new mastery, because you might end up getting a nasty little surprise with those. How does Necromantic Aegis, Animate Weapon, Animate Guardian, etc. all work with Crucible passive trees? Most Crucible passive trees should work with these, however, Crucible passives that allocate notables will not work because minions don't have regular passive trees. Will you consider adding a Crucible-specific equipment slot, like for the Sanctum Relics, so that players don't have to potentially sacrifice leveling gems in their weapon swap? And actually, it's not really leveling gems that's the biggest problem here. It's a bunch of other utility situations where people might want to use their offhand weapons. For example, if you're playing an Ignite character that uses Obliteration while killing trash monsters, and then swaps over to something with some damage on it, like Singularity, when you're fighting a map boss. To address this feedback, we are planning to make it so that the leftmost identified weapon in your inventory will also be selectable in Crucible encounters. This solves a lot of those problems. I do think that GGG will need to work out exactly how to break ties on this. For example, if you have 2 claws that are both jammed against the leftmost side of your inventory, will it take the one that's in the top left corner, or will it do something else? There'll need to be some sort of tiebreaker, but this is a huge improvement. This is not necessarily the most perfect solution. I think something like the Scourge system would have been better, but this is definitely going to address the critical problem that this league was going to have if it went live without this. Uniques that are commonly used for a purpose that doesn't match their base type, example a caster-themed unique such as the Whispering Ice, which has a warstaff base, have special weightings for Crucible passive trees. We have tagged uniques as being caster-themed or minion-themed. For example, Cosprey's Malice or Whispering Ice can roll caster skills, and things like Choba Chaba or United in Dream can roll minion skills. Do Triggerbots relocate the ability, or do Triggerbots count as the ones dealing damage? For example, if I use Triggerbots to trigger a cast on critical strike set up with a spell, will my spell leech apply to me? Triggerbots do not count as dealing damage. The origin point of the trigger changes to the Triggerbots, so in this case, spell leech still applies to the player. When using the new Triggerbots from the Saboteur Ascendancy, what specific aspects of triggered skills are moved to the Triggerbots locations? This is doing the same thing as Arcanist Brand, which is overriding the location the triggered spell thinks it was cast from. Anything that happens at the location the skill was cast from will happen at the location of the bots instead. It does not change where the skill is targeted at, only where it originates from. It does not change anything which adds an ongoing effect to the caster, such as Blade Vortex or the Aegis skills, because that's not using the location where they were cast from, that's using the object which has the triggered skill. So that is all of the FAQs that have been asked today. I had a number of questions that I was going to ask as well. I'll put a link to all of them down in the description below. So the most important question that I wanted to add to the FAQ is what happens if there is a particular mod that reads, this item vendors for an additional Mirror of Kalandra. If that exists, and if you're able to mirror that item and then vendor the mirrored copy, get your Mirror of Kalandra plus all of the other things you would normally get from vendoring it, then that's something that, if it's allowed to exist, would generate infinite alchemy shards and alteration shards for the wealthiest players in the game. But not necessarily just limited to those, because with Gilded Fossils, they could pretty much generate everything in the game with that, including mirror shards, and then end up with infinite mirrors as well. Needless to say, this is something that probably can't be allowed to go live, and so I'd like to see if GGG have thought of that and addressed it. Otherwise, the key questions I was asking revolve around whether the mods that are on an item impact the Crucible trees that are put onto them, and then a whole lot of things about how the Crucible trees interact with various forms of really exotic crafts. Probably the most important ones being Crychic Chimerals, the Imprint Beasts, Phenomenal Plagued Arachnids, the Split Beasts, and Awakeners Orbs, but the whole list will be down in the description below. Anyways, that's all I got on this. May your Vaal Orbs have interesting results, and Crucible is getting closer.